You know, what's so funny about an art career is that it's just a whole series of lucky accidents. After school, I took a little bit of a hiatus from making art, but Dash kind of pulled me back into it. I have this awful tendency to take over other people's projects, and so he would do animations, and I'm like, I could do that better. And one day he came to me and he said, "We are going to make a feature film." And I said, "Sure we are, Dash. That's what we're gonna do." And then we just started and we did it, and which just seems crazy in retrospect. But my entire high school Sinking into the Sea came out in 2016. Was all sort of, I can't even really explain how we managed to do it. We just, we worked on it nights and weekends in our kitchen in Brooklyn, and we were just floored by the response it got. And that film got enough traction that it got us the financing for Cryptozoo. Here and there, Dash and I have also done short animations for documentaries. I'm currently working freelance, doing documentary animation in between our larger projects. But Cryptozoo, we started at the beginning of 2017, or I came on in the beginning of 2017. And I worked both as the head of the animation department, doing a lot of the animation work, the original painting, and producing, which was an exciting new role for me, because when you scale up a project, two artists together don't always produce twice as much work, because there's all the back and forth, and it was just so much a bigger project. One of the brilliant things about Dash as a director is that he casts artists the way that another director might cast actors. You cast them because they fit into your project, but you also cast them for who they are, what they bring to a role. And he brought in a lot of people from comics. He does a lot of drawing. I do a lot of drawing. But my artwork alone has a tendency to get a little bit boring, a little bit safe. Dash's can go way out into left field, and it doesn't always communicate really well. And each of the artists, but it's like so bold and exciting and full of ideas. And mine is very precise, and it has there's a consistency in the work I do. And so we each have these strengths and weaknesses, and that's also true of all the other artists that he brought in. And so the best thing about the projects we do is that I get to bring these things that don't immediately mesh together and figure out how can these things all be true in the same universe. Right. He and I both, we were the artiest people in Richmond. I think we were fated to be together, and our entire relationship was built on making things together. And there's been this, and I originally thought I was interested in illustration, and then I found that for me, a single image could often become too precious, and that there's something about just the onslaught of work in animation, you have to let go. And I need to be forced to let go. And so I found that it allowed me to, working in animation allowed me to access something that I was not going to be able to access in another medium. And for Dash has come from comics. That's his first love. And there's this long history between comics and animation. The first animation is generally credited to Winsor McCay, who did Little Nemo in Slumberland, Gertie the dinosaur. And over again, you see people moving back and forth from comics to animation just because of the similarities in both medium. And so it was a natural outgrowth of the stuff that he wanted to do. I don't think either of us would ever go near a live action film with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. The software I primarily use is Adobe After Effects, which took me a really long time to come to love. It's a very not user-friendly program. I would say I stopped hating it after about 3 years, and I actually started to like it about the 5th year. Oh my. Yeah, so it took a while. And I guess my advice to anyone who is learning After Effects is lean hard into the code in it, because the minute you start coding in After Effects, it starts behaving itself and not fighting you. I think at its core, it's the story of 3 women who work in acquisitions for a zoo for mythological creatures. And along the course of a journey for a particular creature, the Baku, which eats dreams and is considered the most powerful creature in this particular universe, they really start to question the morality of bringing these creatures into a public environment, whether they are helping or hurting. And then it goes all Jurassic Park and sideways. Well, Dash is responsible for the narrative core. He's the writer and director, and I've heard him answer this question enough times that I can basically parrot his answer, which is that it started with a couple of pillars. One is that he had a fellowship at the New York Public Library where he was seeing, and one of his fellows was working on countercultural newspapers from the 60s. And what was kind of amazing in this pre-internet time was that there was this intense feeling of optimism, and there was a very consistent look throughout them. And so both that look and that optimism, and then us, 80 years down the road, knowing kind of how that all played out, was one of the pillars. And then he was also thinking of me, because he's a wonderful human being, and he knew that I was playing a lot of tabletop role-playing games. And so he wanted to have something full of magical creatures that I would enjoy animating and painting, and that group was all women, and it was happening in Brooklyn, and I would get a lot of women who were coming from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. So it was this very globe-trotting, hip young ladies fighting monsters thing. So that inspired the all-female cast, and then the creature at the core of the film, the Baku, was also one of the instigating elements, because a Baku eats dreams, and Dash feels that movies are very dreamlike, and that kind of took it from a potential comic idea into being a film idea. And those three things kind of mixed together. As for the art style, High School Sinking is kind of taken over by this thick black wavy line that sort of overpowers everything else in the film. And so we really wanted to try and do something a bit more subtle. The goal was to have fewer really good drawings that we could spend a lot more time on, and then reuse them. And then I have loved puppetry, 2D puppetry, for forever and ever and ever and ever. I've been astonished, actually, in the last couple of years. I'm like, wait, somehow I managed to become a professional puppeteer. How did that happen? And really the art style, Dash did a ton of drawing. I did a ton of drawing and painting. The thing that unifies it is just Dash's eye plus my eye. It's us both doing exactly what comes most naturally to us, and then smushing them together, and somehow that smush makes them actually interesting. 99.9% of the images you see on screen are physical objects in the real world. Yeah, there's some video effects of video, and obviously particle generators and that sort of stuff, but the raw materials in almost all cases are things you can touch and hold. I started making the first physical art in January of 2017, and we finished the last renders in January of 2021. That's hands down organization. Okay. Organization. In High School Sinking, we were able to, it was very much a one-to-one process. You have a shot, you have a background for that shot, you have some straight ahead, it was some cell animation for that shot. And so there was this whole structure of having a shot number, and then you'd have background number, same as shot number, and then animation chunk, same as shot number, and it was all very clear. It was not at all how it was for Cryptozoo, because we were trying to reuse the puppets and the close-ups and all this other stuff, and so just keeping track. And it was there were so many more sets and so many more characters, and all these puppets and we had we went from having 2 people on the project to having 5 or 6 people in the pipeline, which doesn't sound like that much, but you can lose. You're where is the drawing? I don't know where the drawing is. Has it been scanned? I don't know. And there was a period about 3 months in where I was being told to hire people and I couldn't figure out anything for them to do. And I had a bit of a meltdown, and I went and I wrote a spreadsheet, and it saved everything.
Spreadsheets are very nice.
Spreadsheets, oh my God, they're the best.
Yeah.
And I made it a fancy spreadsheet that like auto-filled things and had like bars, and it managed to, not only did it keep track of everything, it also gamified the whole process, because you'd have little meters that filled up as the project, and it was very tiny, but like it's still that like act of putting your name in the box and the meter moving is life. Yeah. This is kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm gonna qualify it, which is that the best part is solving the problem, like waking up and having a new issue to solve, but knowing that it's solvable and having that like functioning on the edge of your ability feeling. And just there, it was lovely because there was always so much to do that you could kind of pop around. So there'd be like days where I'm just like, all I want to do in the whole world is paint. And I'm like, there's painting to do. Yeah. And then I'd wake up and think, I want to rig things today. And there was rigging to do. So the great joy of it is that there was always a really solid problem to solve. And if you didn't want to solve that problem, you could solve a different problem. And that no matter what your mood, there was something fun to do.
Or a lot of the painting was watercolor, right?
Gouache, yeah.
Gouache, okay.
But we used gouache in two very different ways. For the human characters, we used gouache washes, and then for the creatures, it was a more opaque paint application. It was something I was very familiar with. You know, I talk about liking animation because it forces me to be less of a fuss budget. When I was in college, I started doing drawings with watercolors. And I really enjoyed that because no matter how much of a fuss budget and how precise you are, water is gonna do something unexpected. And so I liked it because it forced me out of that comfort zone. And I also have like a weird family connection to gouache. It was always in my house growing up because my parents were painters, and it works well at small scale. My painting looks distressingly like my parents' paintings. So yeah, it was a medium I was comfortable with, and I just had a lot of reasons to like it already. They, throughout my entire childhood, did the craft show circuit. They made puzzles. I don't know if you've ever seen like a kid's toy where you have like 9 blocks, and then on each set of sides they might have a picture, like you might have fairy tale scenes.
I think I've never seen that before.
Yeah, they're like cubes. So my parents would make those, except you would take the bottom row and turn it a quarter turn and put it at the top, and it would continue the image. And you go 3 up, 3 over, 3 up, 3 over, and so it would loop and tell a story. Or they would do these paintings, but they would be on magnets, and it would be like squares, and you could take one side and it would fit onto the other side, so you could rearrange what was in the center of the painting. You know, I really love Lauren. I think she's just a jerk. She's just awful. You know what's great about one way to really know an animation is working is if whatever character you're animating right now is your absolute favorite. And that's how you know that you love every single one of them. As far as the cryptids go, the Tengu I particularly love, and the Kamudi, the giant snake. And those I particularly love because, you know, all the cryptids are pulled from actual cultures, but in those two cases, the source material came through not just in the design, but in the actual movement. Like the Kamudi is very angular, inspired by it. And so those were things that was just really rewarding to see that actually work. Well, the first one is don't wait for permission at all. Like, you know, we tried to get a film made through traditional channels, and it just didn't work. And so what has worked for both of our films is just starting and also just say yes. You know, you never know what opportunity is going to come out of something you say yes to today. you know, our first introduction to kind of professional filmmakers actually came through Dash's comics, because John Cameron Mitchell was a fan of his comics, and so brought his comics in as prop art for one of his films, and that forged that connection, which allowed us to make other connections. And you never know when some small thing that you are doing is going to blow up and turn into something that is the rest of your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this interview.
Yes.
It was really interesting to get to talk to you and talk about that film. It was really nice. Thank you so much.